Yes, everybody, and welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com, or, of course, if you are watching on our fast-growing YouTube channel, that's Tar Heel Illustrated. I'm THI staff writer Jacob Turner, and joining me, as he always does for the UNC Basketball Show, is our very own publisher, Andrew Jones. And AJ, another exciting show ahead, as I like to say, is we're obviously going to be talking about Carolina's two recent wins over Georgia Tech and the Citadels. We haven't done a podcast for about a week now since before those games. So we're going to discuss a little bit of that, what we've kind of learned from the Tar Heels through those two games, and obviously a little bit later on, look ahead to Ohio State this Saturday and obviously Michigan next Wednesday in Charlotte. So some big games coming up for the Tar Heels in a pretty close span of time. But AJ, let's focus on Georgia Tech and Citadel. Two victories for the Tar Heels. Carolina improving to 7-4, 1-1 in the ACC. What are your thoughts on where the Tar Heels right now are at right now, because for me, the last two games are, potentially, not even potentially, in my opinion, the two best overall performances, not only physically, but mentally, I think, we've seen from the Tar Heels through 11 games in what is a pretty short season.
Yeah, a lot of times I really don't even care who a team plays if I'm looking for certain things to judge them on. And for Carolina, the number one thing that needed to change was their approach, was how they mentally approached everything. And we've talked a lot about cutting the cord. I've written a lot about cutting the cord. It's kind of an overdone topic right now, but then again, it isn't until it's fully cut. And it hasn't been fully cut, but I do think they snipped away a lot out of these last two games because they said, Caleb, who I've really enjoyed talking to the last couple of weeks, I love how he's matured and grown and is pretty upfront about a lot of stuff. And part of it helps that we're actually in person now too with the post game and interviews and everything. But he said that they needed what happened to them. They needed to have the tree just shake and all kinds of stuff fall off. And the stuff that had to fall off was last year, the residue of that miracle run last year, because you can't carry that stuff over to the next year. It just doesn't happen. And I think that the media expected it to, the fans expected it to, and I think the team expected it to. And they placed massive expectations on themselves with all the championship or bust talk. But one thing that they learned during the 4-game losing streak, and quite frankly, the first 9 games, they didn't play well in any of them, was that you can say that all you want, but there is no guarantee. Nothing carries over. You have to get rid of that mindset and begin now building toward making that run. Because they told us last March, man, everything we went through in November and December was January was important because it got us to where we are now. Well, they had to begin the process of doing that now, getting to where they're going to be in March. Last March will help them next March because they won't be in all by the stage. That's about it. Nothing else is going to play into it. So I think the approach to Georgia Tech and the fact that they had the decisive run late in the first half, which was very Carolina-like, and the approach to the Citadel, they had a run that closed the first half as well, some run that was very Carolina-like, and they continued to pull away, which was very Carolina-like. I think that those are really positive things, not just because of performance, but because of the approach. I thought they were playing well against the Citadel early, and it's 26-25.
No, yeah.
And part of that was because the Citadel had a couple of dudes hitting threes that, you see, yeah, I'm going to give that guy a 3, but he hit it. They hit 4 straight in one stretch to close the gap in that game. But I thought Carolina was very perky offensively, and that showed, and they were sharing the ball, and they were moving without the ball so much that they didn't have to use a ton of high ball screens. They could get baskets other ways. So I like that. And I thought that was eventually going to carry over to the other end, and it did. They shut down a lot of the open shots that the Citadel was getting. They missed some, but when you hurry a team, they're going to miss, even if it's an open shot. If there's an open, hurried shot, that's a good shot for the defense. If it's an open set shot and there's time, that's not a great shot for the defense. So they sped things up a little bit and affected their shooting in that respect. They were really good on the boards. But the thing that I'm going to look for right now, because this clearly illustrates how they're playing on offense, the assist numbers.
Yeah.
In the 4-game losing streak, this is a horrid stat. Or I could use the word vulgar for this one, right? They had 38 assists in the 4-game losing streak. And let's remember, they got 20 extra minutes against Alabama. That's 180 minutes. They had 38 assists. That's 1 assist almost every 5 minutes of game time. It's not very good. in the 2 games that they've won since then, and by the way, that was 38 assists on 104 baskets. In the 2 games that they've won now, 39 assists on 59 baskets. So they're assisting nearly 58% of the time. They were doing it at around 30% of the time. And to give perspective here, Jacob, last year's team assisted 54.1% of their baskets were assisted. The national average right now is around 51%. So with a 4-game losing streak, they were literally one of the 3 or 4 worst teams in the country at percentage of assists on field goals. Now, and think about it. Last year's team was really, they weren't great at offensive rebounding, but they were really good at offensive rebounding.
They were good, yeah.
So a lot of times when you score a basket, a second chance point, there's often not an assist that goes with it. It's a rebound, a guy goes up and scores, right? Sometimes, but they did have some kickouts the other day. So in their sets that didn't end up with offensive rebounds, the assist percentage was even higher. So now it's not good on the year, but it was really good in these 2 games. That tells me, and I know this is a drawn out response here, but that tells me that they're highly connected. They're highly aware. They're moving without the ball. The spacing is better. I thought the spacing was great in the last 2 games, in part because they're determined to go down low. They're going to run the offense to the post, and suddenly the driving lanes open up because of the defenses have to honor and respect the post movement. And Armando could slide out just a tad bit, and there's that lane to the basket. Drives got to the rim more in the last 2 games than they were previously, and those are easier drives to convert. And you draw a foul, and you get the +1s and all that kind of stuff. So we'll hit in a little bit more about what was working, but that's a very long-winded way of saying, yes, they were connected. And there are a couple of examples of why they were connected, and that's what I'm going to look for from this team every game moving forward.
Yeah, it's funny because I had those assist numbers written down too. And just to throw one more thing into those numbers, they didn't have, just referencing the Virginia Tech and Indiana losses, they didn't have more than 6 in those losses. I think it was 5 against one team and 6 against the other. So 15 against Georgia Tech, 24 against Citadel. It's easy to see why the offense was more fluid and why they won like they did. Let's talk about rebounding real quick, because for me, what I could tell early in these 2 games, I'm going back to the first couple possessions of the Georgia Tech game, that there was a renewed sense of urgency, not even just urgency, a renewed sense of let's pound the ball down low, like you talked about. Because early in the Georgia Tech game, as you remember, it was so obvious that the emphasis is let's go get Armando the ball. And it worked for the Tar Heels too. And it ended up being carried out through the whole game. And that's why Carolina was able to win like they did. But focusing on the rebound numbers, which obviously goes hand in hand with dominating down low and points in the paint and all that, rebounding has improved. 47-31 advantage for the Tar Heels against the Citadel. 43-22 advantage against Georgia Tech on the glass. To reference, Carolina's 4 losses this year, out-rebounded in 3 of those 4 games. So in those numbers too, it's not like you're out-rebounding somebody by 47-45. That's more of what we've been used to seeing from North Carolina as a program, where they're not only winning the rebounding battle, but in a lot of ways they're dominating the glass and out-rebounding their opponents by double figures. So I think that's been a big improvement as well. I want to talk about Jalen Washington because I think he's helped in the post as well. We'll save that for a second here in a little bit. But what are your thoughts on rebounding? Because to me, that's another aspect that has improved over the last 2 games, and hence why we've seen some of the best, if not the best, performances from the Tar Heels this year.
Ron Williams long said that that's the most important stat. And I agree with him on that. And I think looking at offensive rebounding is where you need to go with this. They, in the first 9 games, they had given up more offensive rebounds. They had given up 13, I think, more offensive rebounds than they had grabbed. In the last 2 games, they're grabbing about 40% of their misses, which is where North Carolina should be. Roy's last team, for all of its wobbliness and some of its warts, they grabbed 44.6% of their missed shots. That's why that team got to the NCAA tournament, because they played bully ball on the glass and they eventually would convert. By going inside to Armando and running the offense to the post, they're getting a lot. They only attempted, 13 threes the other day.
Yeah,
so they're not so reliant on that. So if you have Armando already down low, and you have a Nance slashing down low, or a Leakey slashing down low, or goodness, Dontre Styles, when he was in the game the other day, he had a couple of offensive rebounds. You're going to grab more of your own misses. If the floaters are closer to the rim from the guard, you're going to grab a lot more of your misses. And that's an important part of who this team is, because An offensive weapon for them is the offensive glass. That is historically the case at North Carolina. That's what Hubert wants. He said all offseason, if there was one part of the game that he continually emphasized had to get better, was they had to grab more of their missed shots and they had to score at a higher clip on their missed shots. You don't want to be at 1 point. You want to be at 1.3, 1.4 points per offensive rebound. They were at that the last 2 games. They had 13 offensive rebounds against the Citadel, and they had 16 second chance points. And that's for a team that shot 50% for the game. So that's good. That's high offensive efficiency. It's high point per game efficiency and all that stuff. So that elevates all those numbers. When you get one shot and it's not a very good shot because there's not good offensive movement and there's not good awareness, and you don't get the offensive rebound, that's what happens when you're at Indiana. That's what happens when you're at Virginia Tech. That's what happens when the team doesn't look very good. Yeah. But if you're getting better looks and you know where the shots are coming from a little bit more because it's a part of who you are, you get more of the offensive rebounds. So to me, the defensive glass hasn't been terrible. Last year, they were arguably the best team in the country on the defensive glass. They needed to upgrade the offensive glass. And they've done that the last 2 games. They will be significantly challenged in that respect Saturday against Ohio State. And they will be to a degree against Michigan with Hunter Dickinson. And we'll talk about those games in a few minutes. But I like the progress that they made in the 3 most important areas right now that really needed to improve and show that their minds are right, beginning with the minds. I like the mental approach and looseness of the team and not playing to be what they were last March and playing to move forward. The other thing is how they've moved the ball offensively, the awareness, the sharing, the connectivity, and the way they've approached the glass. To me, and as a result, by the way, they've been better in the open court. That could be a fourth thing if you want to talk about that as well, because that goes to the big man. They're running the secondary break. Hubert said they made a major point of emphasis before Georgia Tech. The bigs have got to run to the post and get there before the defender, and the guards have to be aware and find them. They've done that a few times, and even if they don't get a shot out of it, man, it turns the defense into chaos. Mm-hmm. And they can swing the ball around and they get open shots because the defense is constantly trying to adjust. Mm-hmm. And when you don't move and you're stagnant, the defenses don't have to adjust that much. The shots are going to be harder. So all those things are tied in together, in my opinion, for them being the best version of North Carolina that they can be. And the fact that Hubert said after the last 2 games, I thought there were times we looked like Carolina, is a really, really good sign.
Yeah, and it's not rocket science. I mean, it's nothing that nobody didn't know. I mean, just go look at not only any good basketball team, really, but any good, better, and some of the better North Carolina basketball teams over the years. They've always been dominant on the glass. They've always had good assist numbers, and they've been a team that's been out in transition. That's just North Carolina basketball 101. I know Hubert Davis is a new coach. He runs a different type of offense, more of a pro-style offense than Roy Williams ran, but still, that's the bread and butter of North Carolina. I don't think that's something that's really ever going to change because, like, I know that you like to use the Roy Williams quote a lot. Rebounding is the most important stat in basketball, especially college basketball, in my opinion. If you can dominate the glass, you're going to have a lot more second chance points. If you can dominate defensive glass as well, you're going to be able to get out, get in transition like North Carolina wants to, and limit the amount of attempts your opponent's going to have. So again, none of this is rocket science. We talked about it at length of like these assist numbers are horrible. These rebounding numbers are not good enough. It's just not what we've seen this year. So it's no coincidence that Carolina focuses in on those, but improves on those in the last 2 games. And we see a lot more improved performances. Again, it's nothing really that should shock anybody in a lot of ways.
Another Royism, if we're going to
might as well, man.
Do the Roy Williams version of this show, is everything's better when the ball goes to the basket.
Oh God, does it ever, man? That's probably my favorite quote. That's probably my
favorite. But when you do lots of different things to increase the percentage of your shot.
Yep.
And it goes to the basket. To me, it also reflects that you're doing a lot of things well.
No doubt.
It's you can't survive on just hitting shots. You've got to get good shots and hit those good shots. So Roy sitting in the Dean Dome the last 2 home games, sitting down there with his wife, with Wanda, watching the games, was probably very pleased. They were doing a lot of things that would check Roy Williams' boxes watching those games. And I know that Hubert was pleased the last 2 games because he wasn't previously.
No doubt about it. He's definitely a lot more pleased with what they've done. Real quickly, before we look ahead to Ohio State and Michigan, I want to talk about Jalen Washington, obviously kind of getting the first minutes of his UNC career over the last couple of games, scoring his first points as well. We'll tie in the bench here too, because I think over the last couple of games as well, I've been really impressed with what I've seen from the likes of like Seth Trimble coming off the bench. I thought Dontrez Styles had his best game this season against the Citadel. Even Tyler Nickel 16 points against the Citadel as well. A lot of those coming in the second half. So we've seen a little bit more increase in production. And I think Jalen Washington has also come in, and you got to remember, guys, he's a guy that just hasn't played a lot of basketball in the last year. He's been recovering from a knee injury. He's a guy that has to get back in the groove. But AJ, I know you love bigs. I know you love talking bigs. So when I watch a guy like Jalen Washington, I think everything's there. I think it's just about getting more comfortable, not only using that knee in a real game, but just getting more comfortable in the offense, the college level, getting in the weight room and getting bigger, and just having a chance now to go full speed in practice on a consistent basis. So for me, not only tying into the bench, but Jalen Washington is a guy that's impressed me, and I still think there's a lot of levels he can go up. And I think having a big like that you can potentially rely on to come in and spell some minutes, not only for Armando, but Pete Nance as well, I think it's just a real positive for North Carolina moving forward.
Yeah, and he's not going to be that guy for a while. It'll be interesting to see how much he plays against Ohio State and Michigan, because they got big dudes. You know, they're both brawny and big. And so that will be, but I think I hope he plays some. I think it'd be good for him just to get a couple of minutes at least, just so he can see what that's like, because he needs to go through that at some point. Yeah. So you might as well do it now, get him in there for a few minutes, see how he handles it. But, you know, he's going to be a work in progress, because we talk about all the time with football. Sometimes the injury is healthy, but the mind hasn't fully connected to the fact that it's healthy. And I have no idea if Jalen's going through that right now. I'm not being given any indication from anybody that he is. His teammates speak about him, about being explosive and all that stuff. I just think that sometimes people are a little uber critical when they first see a guy, and they want to see stuff that they love. And if they see something that they don't love, they focus on it too much. And some people have been a little critical of the explosiveness. They got to understand where he is. He's played 8 minutes in almost 2 years of highly structured basketball. So give him some time. I love the skill set. I watch him in warmups. I go down to the court on the baseline before every game. I watch the guys. I focus on some just to kind of get a feel for him. And certainly with someone like him, because up until 2 games ago, that was the only basketball of his that we could see. And the skills are there. He's got a pretty shot. Teammates talk about that turnaround jumper, which that was his first basket against Georgia Tech, and he shot it against the Citadel as well. He's got a really long reach. He kind of reminds me of Sam Perkins with the very long arms, kind of similar height, similar length, maybe even some similar body movements. And I know that I'm not comparing him to Perkins as a player, just maybe in some mannerisms, although maybe a little bit more electrifying than Sam was, but with the potential. But I do think he's a guy that's going to eventually help them. Right now, it's December 15th. So you've got January, you get 3 months when the NCAA tournament starts. That's a lot of time to bring him along, get him comfortable. They're a good team without him. I really believe that. In spite of the 4-game losing streak, they're a good team without him. They slowly bring him along. That will be a layer of them continually getting better and better and better. And they could end up being a great team with him. He could serve a Tony Bradley type role in this team, or an Ed Davis role in 2009 on this team, which those clubs needed. And it served them really, really well. And I think he could eventually be that kind of guy for this team, or maybe even more. Maybe when they play some bouncier teams, he's on the floor a little bit more. With bouncier front courts, he's on the floor a little bit more. So I love the potential. I love the skill. He's got a terrific attitude. He understands that it's not one and done stuff for him. He's got a process in front of him that's going to take some time. And he's in a place that has been very patient with him. Very patient. You should appreciate the fact that Carolina just didn't rush him into stuff. He was cleared a while ago, but they wanted to add some layers of the clearing process to him, to the point where when they did put him in there, that he was at a point where he wasn't going to get any more comfortable without playing in games. And that's why he got on the floor. So as far as the bench goes, Tyler Nickel and Seth Trimble were on the floor when they made the push against Virginia Tech. It earned Nickel 6 minutes in the first half against Georgia Tech, 7 minutes in the first half against the Citadel. That's huge. And then the way he played there tonight, I think the trust is there 100%. And Tyler, and what's funny, I've asked Hubert twice about him now. And both times he talks about his competitiveness. Now, he doesn't back down from anything. He doesn't fear anything. He feels like he belongs. He's going to be on the court at Madison Square Garden this week. A kid from rural Virginia or outside of Harrisonburg, it's somewhat rural. He's going to be in that environment. He's not going to be afraid. And you've got to have moxie dudes on the team. And let's remember, and this is something to mark as well, It goes back to a video Carolina put out on Twitter of some practices in like mid-October. I'll never forget because some people kind of jumped on this. Caleb drove the lane, penetrated to the right wing, kicked it out to Tyler, and as soon as Caleb passed it, the camera's right there underneath the basket pretty much on the baseline. Caleb doesn't even watch the shot. He starts to walk away and he goes, knockdown. And then you see the ball swish through the basket. He's got unbelievable confidence in Tyler. I think he likes him a lot. They appear to have some comfort on the floor. And 4 of Tyler's first 6 shots against the Citadel were passes from Caleb that led to those shots. So I think he's a guy that's going to be a part of things. Seth obviously is going to be a part of things. He's probably their best defensive player already right now. Mm-hmm. And then you add Jalen Washington in the mix, and then Poff is kind of struggling a little bit right now. You're looking at absolutely a 9-man rotation. Mm-hmm. By the time this team gets into the postseason, a 9-man rotation where roles are defined. The starters aren't playing 38 minutes a game. They're playing 32, 33 minutes a game, which I think will make a big difference. And I really think the way this thing can take shape, Jacob, with the addition of Washington, with the bench getting more and more playing time and being trusted for not just 2-minute stretches, but I think it's important when Nichols out there for 6 and 7 minutes. That's a long stretch of a game. Hubert wants him to get out there and get a sweat and lose himself in the game. There's a lot of trust right there. I think that's all big. I think the club's in a pretty good spot right now, all things considered.
Yeah, we'll learn a lot more on Saturday and definitely next Wednesday because, like I said, some tough opponents coming up. Real quickly, I want to give a shout-out to our sponsor before we dive into the preview, and that's The Rogue Shop. Make sure you check them out, rogueshop.com, specializing in top-shelf, family-grown hemp products, CBD, Delta-8, Delta-9, tinctures, oils, creams, candies, gummies, whatever you're into, they've got it for you, and it's all high-quality stuff. AJ's a big fan of the cream. God, I know about 5 people who are a big fan of the cream, just that I know directly. Oh, yeah. It works really, really well. It's fantastic quality stuff. I know some other people tried some of the product, tried a few of their products as well, and it's just really high quality. I know I say that a lot, but it really is based on some of the other stuff you can find out there. This is really good stuff. So make sure you check them out, rogueshop.com. Use that promo code TARHEELS10 to save on your order as well. Link is in the description below. Big thank you to Rogue Shop for continuing to sponsor and hopefully going to be our sponsor.
Well, they got a lot of Christmas stuff going on too right now.
Yep,
so you might save even extra on top of that. So go nuts on it.
Great Christmas gift ideas as well if you're looking for some last minute stuff. And trust me, guys, you won't be disappointed with what you get. So link in the description. Go check them out. And remember, use that promo code TARHEELS10 to save. All right, AJ, real quickly, we're going to look ahead. Obviously, North Carolina playing number 23 ranked Ohio State on Saturday in Madison Square Garden, 3 p.m. tip-off in the CBS Sports Classic. So Ohio State sitting at 7-2, 1-0 in the Big Ten, won 4 of their last 5, only lost during that stretch coming to Duke. And then obviously got Michigan the few days later in Charlotte on Wednesday evening in the Jumpman Invitational. Wolverines sitting at 6-3, 1-0 in the Big Ten currently. That game tips off at 7 p.m. So, AJ, some, big-time opponents in the same conference coming up for North Carolina. I think Ohio State, at least on paper, looks like it's going to be a little bit bigger of a test. I think it's a good basketball team. It's a team that is very physical, and I think will cause North Carolina some problems. So we're going to know a lot more about this North Carolina team and whether this stretch is just kind of a fluke or if they really have improved and can do it against better quality opponents. Because for me, that's the next step. It's great to beat Georgia Tech. It's great to beat the Citadel. But for North Carolina, not only for their NCAA tournament resume, but they're going to be playing quality opponents in the ACC coming up here soon as well. So they need to be prepared and need to prove that they can actually compete and win some of these games. And it'll start this Saturday with Ohio State, which you'll obviously be at. So what are your thoughts on the matchups and the tests that await the Tar Heels?
Before I answer that very quickly, I should have mentioned Dontrez Styles and DeMarco Dunn. We don't know what's going to happen with Styles. He played pretty well the other day. We'll see how that plays out. Dunn was in the rotation when he got hurt. He's expected back by the 1st of January, so just in a couple of weeks. I took a picture of him the other day. He doesn't have the cast anymore. It's just padding on the hand, so it looks like he's definitely coming along quickly. He very well could still be in the rotation by the end of February as well. So they could have a 10, maybe 11-man rotation. Who knows? Certainly guys that maybe they can trust. As far as this Saturday goes, bully ball, man.
Yeah.
Armando loves bully ball. They're going to get some bully ball action from Ohio State, but there's plenty of athletic ability there. It's a club that I think presents challenges to this Carolina team. They're plus 10.5 on the offense or in the rebounding margin overall, which is an area that Carolina is only at like 3.5 or so for right now. They need to get those numbers up. They haven't been their usual selves, as we addressed earlier. They've got a big guy named Zed Key who can score from a lot of points. He's basically going to burrow down low, but he can step out and hit three. He's had a couple of games where he's attempted three three-pointers, so he'll drag his man out there. Justice Sewing's a guy that's been there a couple of years. He's had a successful college career, started at Cal. And then they have a freshman, a kid named, his last name is Sensible. I'm trying to think of his first name. Bryce Sensible, I think his name is. Yeah. He's a kid that's only playing like 20 minutes a game, but he's second in scoring. He's had some huge volume scoring games. And I think that the playing time, the last game he played 31 minutes. So maybe he's worked himself into either a starter spot or starter's minutes. And he's a kid that can do a lot of stuff. He's an athlete, 6'6". He can shoot threes. He can drive. He can do a lot of that stuff. And they have depth. Chris Holtman's a fantastic coach over at Ohio State, a really, really good coach. This is a club that's going to test Carolina's grit. They're going to test their focus. They're going to test the bully stuff and see how Carolina can respond to being punched a little bit, which I think is something that they haven't had to respond to the last two games. So they may approach things the right way, but what happens when there's a 12-2 run and it's physical and it looks ugly? How do they respond to that? That's a part of what this team's ultimate makeup is going to be as well. And I suspect they'll have to deal with that Saturday at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, no doubt about it. It's going to be a tough test for sure. And I think it's really going to show, like I've mentioned a few times, if Carolina's really made those improvements, because like you said, bully ball, I think that's something Carolina's struggled with too at times this year, is playing against more physical teams, matching that physicality. And we'll see if they can do that on Saturday. Real quickly to hit on Michigan too. Like I said, Wednesday night matchup in Charlotte. And that's going to be a tough game too. I know Michigan not necessarily, kind of in similar boat to Carolina, not tearing it up right now, but still a decent record, 6-3, 1-0 in the Big Ten. So I think that's going to be a tough test for Carolina. If they can get through this stretch to 2-0, not only are fans going to feel a lot better as they dive into ACC play, but I think Carolina as a whole, coaches, players are going to have a lot more confidence going into ACC play. And, 2 big wins over 2 Big Ten opponents, you can do a lot for your confidence moving forward.
Yeah, Hunter Dickinson versus Armando Bacot.
Yep. It's be fun to watch that. Game,
Carolina pounded them last year in Chapel Hill, and a big part of that was because Dickinson got in foul trouble and just never got out. He played 18 minutes, and that would have been a different game if he had played 35 minutes. There's no doubt about it. He scored 4 points. I would imagine he's licking his chops. He's a kid that Carolina recruited. He's a really good player, proud player, and guys like him, they like these opportunities to make amends. So I think Carolina should expect the best of Hunter Dickinson, and that's pretty damn good. There's some other guys. They have a lot of new names. One of them is Chet Howard, Juwan's son, is 6'8", really good player. He's their second leading scorer. I'm sure that he's learned the game at a fairly high level under his dad.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Given his long career in the NBA and success at Michigan and now being the coach there. And there's some other athletes there. Joey Baker, by the way, is on Michigan's roster, the former Duke player. Mm-hmm. So he's playing about 14 minutes a game off the bench. He's had a couple of games in which that three has fallen for him. They look like they're still trying to figure things out. That's a club that could be a lot better in February and March than they are right now because there's a lot of newness. They lost a lot of dudes off last year's team, but they got that guy down low. And that's a hell of a part to build stuff around. And Howard is a really, really nice player. He's probably a future NBA player. So they've got some parts right now that are working well. And I would imagine they're just going to get better and better and better. So the version Carolina sees next Wednesday will probably be a better version than what people saw previously. And they almost beat Virginia at home. And Virginia is the best team in the ACC right now. And you could argue that they're the best team in the country right now, the way that they have played and some of the quality wins that they've racked up already. So Carolina's going to get tested in both these games. They need these games for their NCAA resume. I know that sounds funny given the fact that they were number one in the country a couple of weeks ago.
It's true, though,
but they put themselves in a position where they need to get some of these wins, and the ACC stinks again. ACC basketball just has not been what it should be lately. They're not going to have a lot of opportunities for serious resume-enhancing wins in the league. They'll have some because they got Duke twice, they got Virginia twice, they got State twice. I think State might be the one team in the league that's better than anybody expected by far. So there are going to be some opportunities, but not a ton. So they need to get some of these wins now. And part of it also is, let's say they keep winning and they put together a stretch. They still have 4 losses already. Mm-hmm. So eventually it's going to come down to who's going to play in Greensboro the first weekend. If it's Carolina and Virginia that plays there, Carolina needs to get wins. They need to get good wins. They need to have an NET rating that warrants a number 1 seed or number 2 seed and playing close to home. So Greensboro is one of the 8 first weekend sites in the NCAA tournament. It's the site of the ACC tournament. So North Carolina's history, their track record of playing NCAA tournaments, starting their tournament runs in the state of North Carolina is outstanding. Almost always ends up in the Final Four. So I think it's important, and it's not too early to start looking at stuff like that, because these 2 games mean show us if these last 2 wins actually mean something. If you have flipped the switch and change the course of your direction, and also can you get wins that are going to help you when the committee sits down that Sunday afternoon and determines where everybody goes and play and who they play in the NCAA tournament. I think these are really big games for the team. They cannot afford whatever happened in the 4-game league. They can't afford a loss, because the doubt and the negativity and all that kind of stuff, I think, will just be an inferno. And I think this club they need to show that they are cutting the cord to last year. And Hubert was asked the other night, when will you know when the cord's cut? And he said, I don't know. But you know what, though? Maybe next Wednesday he'll know.
Yeah.
And I think that's what this next week represents.
Yeah. Big challenges await, and we'll see how the Tar Heels do. Obviously, AJ will be in New York for Saturday's game against the Buckeyes, and in Charlotte as well for the Jumpman Invitational. So make sure you keep it locked to TarHeelIllustrated.com for all your coverage leading up to those games, during and after, for the Tar Heels. So good place to wrap this one up. I've been Jacob Turner. He's been Andrew Jones. Another episode of the UNC Basketball Show. We appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Make sure you check out rogueshop.com and use that promo code TarHeels10. Link is in the description below. And we'll see you guys in the next one. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell as well. Thanks for watching.
Thanks.